This is the AdvancedSkeleton FaceSetup. Let's have a closer look at the controllers and the attributes on the controllers. We'll start up with the main controller for the face, and that's going to be this square, which is the first control box. By selecting this, we can see there's a bunch of attributes here that determines the visibility of various groups of controllers. We got ABC controllers, T-tongue, etc., etc. Let's start by turning them all off, and we can turn them on and go through them one by one. You'll see that turning them off still leaves this control box here, so we'll talk about that first. This is we call a control box, and it's a box on the side here of the face, and there's actually two of them, but they are working fairly different. The first one is basically driving systems, and the second ones are basically shortcuts to selecting controllers on the face. We'll get back to that later. All right, let's turn on the first one here, and that's called the A control visibility. If we turn that on, we see we get a bunch of controllers on the face, and they're mostly green. And the A controllers are the controllers on the face that controls the largest regions. So we'll see if we select any of these and move them around, they all move fairly big areas of the face. And we'll see as we go through the B and C controllers, they control more and more narrow areas of the face. Let's take a look at the controllers here that have some extra attributes, and that's going to be the eyelids. Now the eyelids have extra attributes for blink, and you'll see it doesn't close all the way, but the bottom link also has a blink attribute that goes a little bit up. So the idea is you can select both of them and apply the blink, and that will make a total blink. And as you can see, it doesn't blink exactly in the center, but you can adjust that. So if you wanted the blink to happen higher, there is an attribute controlling where is the blink center. Now, there is another way to blink, so you don't have to select the two attributes and adjust the blink, and that's going to be on the driving system here. You have a single controller. So this is a driving system here called blink that drives this blink attribute on this controller as well as the blink attribute on the lower lid controller. Next, we have fleshy. Now, this is an attribute that if you just change the attribute, nothing happens because it works together with another attribute. And that's going to be, it moves the controller depending on the direction that the eye is looking, and it gives us the fleshy eye effect. So if we were to look to the side, if we now select the upper and lower lid and adjust the fleshy, you can see that we can dial in and out how much of a fleshy eye effect we want to have. Now, there is the obvious 4 controllers running around the eyelid to control the exact shape of the eyelid. Now, there's another set outside of it with a slightly different tint of green, and that is the second eyelid ring around the eye. And yes, likewise, these outer lid attributes also have a fleshy attribute, but they are by default a lower value. So the outer will move with the eye in a much lower amount. Next, the lip. You can see we have a quite a unique attribute here. Fraction mode. Essentially, fraction mode controls whether or not the underlying driven curve is going to be uniform or not. By default, fraction mode is on. And what that means, one of the main benefits of that is you can grab the corner of the lip and just start pulling. And you can see that the length distribution distributes all the way across the lip from one side all the way to the other side. In contrast, if you were to have fraction mode all the way off, you now see that the lip, as you move the controllers, you have much more localized control. But that also means stretching the one side of the lip will only stretch the lip until the next controller. Again, if we turn fraction mode on, you see that stretching the lip on one side will stretch it all the way to the other side. So it'll kind of remain that uniform length distance between each of the vertices all along the lip. So that's the fraction mode. By default, it's on, and that'll give you the best results. But the option is there to turn it off if you need more localized direct control. Next attribute, you see that there's an attribute here that says follow the jaw. Now let's open the jaw, and we'll see that the reason why the lips give you this open shape is because they have different amount of follow jaw. So you can say the lower lip were not to follow the jaw at all. Likewise, you could say that these side lip controllers could not follow the jaw. And at this point, you see the jaw opening and the lips not following at all. By default, the values is set that the lower lip is to completely follow the jaw, and this lip, the corners are set to 50% follow the jaw. But yes, you can get some interesting results of different characteristics of the face by adjusting this. So you see you can get a completely different shape as you open the jaw by reducing the amount of these side lip follows. Alright, next you see we have this sticky amount. That means you can open the lip, you can select this lip corner here, and you can dial in the sticky, and you see that kind of zips up the lip, and typical lip zip. You can select both right and left at the same time if you want it. And that's giving us sticky lips. Next controller, you can see there's a yellow controller over here. This controller is a bit of an exception because in general, you'll see yellow controllers over here. That's typical of the driving system controllers. Controllers that essentially are set to drive a bunch of other controllers to get a more high-level system. This is also a driving system controller, but it's not placed in a box. And essentially, these lip smile pull controllers here, as they are called, are essentially pretty much the same as the controllers over here. It's just a nice intuitive extra option to be able to grab that mouth corner directly and start pulling it around. All right, that's those A controllers. Let's turn on the B controllers. And just to make things more simple and clear, we'll turn off the A controllers. Here are the B controllers, which are mostly red colored controllers. There's some exception here on the lid outer. And as we start moving these around, you can see these tend to control a much more narrow area than the A controllers. Let's turn on both A and B controllers here to show that they kind of overlap in control. So if we select the upper eyelid A controller, you can see that a single controller can close the entire eyelid, whereas the B controllers is broken into sections, so you can get a more accurate control of the shape of the eyelid. So essentially what's happening underneath here is that these controllers are driving these controllers, which again is driving the deformation. And that again gives you the option of the amount of level you want to control. You want to control a broader area or a narrow area. And actually that goes even a level further. It goes from this controller is the most narrow area. This controller is a broader area. And then there's again another level, which is the driving system. Whereas here you get much higher control and you can control a bunch of the high level controllers. So there's definitely a hierarchy of controllers here that allows you to control fine detail or on a high level. Probably the highest level controller is the emotion controllers here, which a single attribute will drive a bunch of other high level controllers on the face. We'll get back to that later. For now, let's continue from the A controls, B controls, and turn on the C controllers. And let's turn off A and B and just see the C controllers. So the C controllers are the blue controllers here, and they're controlling much more narrow area. But yes, these are useful controllers for controlling those details in the face expressions. So altogether, A, B, C controllers makes up these colored controllers on the face. Next, eye controllers. Okay, so to make it more easy and clear, let's turn off the ABC controls for now and only turn on eye controls. And we'll see what that gives us is, first of all, this controller that lets you rotate the eye. It also has the controls the iris and another controllers for the pupil. Normally, you wouldn't need to control these by the controllers directly because they do have a driving system here that lets you control this. So let's turn off the eye control visibility now and show you that you can control that through the driving system. So for rotating the eye, you can just move these driving system controllers here. And for controlling the pupil and iris size, you can control that here with the pupil and iris attribute. All right, that was the eye control visibility. Next, aim control visibility. We'll turn it on and we'll see we get this look at controller. So basically the eyes are set to look at this controller. Gives you option to do left and right individually if you need that, and the one that does the both. It has an attribute here for follow, and by default that's on. That means if you select the head controller and rotate the head, the eyes will keep looking the same direction as they were relative to the head. You can turn that off. You can set follow to 0. Now, as you rotate the head, the eyes stay fixed on whatever they are looking at because it is no longer following the head controller. Okay, let's reset the pose. We can do that quickly by loading up the picker here and just choose pose, reset. Next, teeth controller, you can turn that on. That shows the teeth controller. However, you can't see the teeth controller by default. They're going to be inside the head. Now, that brings on the good time to talk about this control box 2, which essentially is shortcut controllers. So here is a bunch of curves. When you select them, you are essentially selecting other control curves. The way that works is that it's just multiple shapes for the same transforms. But for instance, the teeth controller is there and it's right around the teeth. But since you can't see it, you can use the shortcut here in the second control box. Actually, let's open them out to make it more obvious. So instead of zooming in and picking this lower teeth controller here, you could just pick it through here. And yes, they are the same controller. You can see that if you select here, that's the lower teeth, same here. It's just multiple shape nodes on the same transform. All right, let's reset the pose again and continue on our list. That was the teeth control. Tongue control, I'll turn that on. Now we can hide the face and the teeth here. We see we have a tongue with a bunch of controllers on the tongue. By default, that's all FK and only FK. If you have some special case you need IK, then you would just select the start and end FK controller and go to your pick tool and say quick IK. And there you go, you got an IK tongue. Okay, I'll undo that. That's not the point for now. There's the tongue controllers. And again, since they are hard to select by default inside the head geometry, there's also buttons over here that selects the same controllers. So you can pick the tongue here and select and control the tongue from the controllers in the control box 2 as well. Next, there's region control visibility. Let's turn that on, and that essentially, as we can see, has these region controllers that are green color controllers. Allows you to move the entire lip area, nose area, the entire eyelid area, and the entire eyebrow area. Now, by default, this attribute is off, the region control visibility. Because you can see when everything is on, it just gets really busy on the face. So by default, teeth, tongue, and region controls visibility is off. That makes it, and eye control visibility are off, which makes it less busy, easier to pick, and you still have those controllers is fairly easily selectable via control box 2. So you can go over here and use this to select the region areas, use this to select the tongue controllers, and use this to select the eye controllers. Okay, so let's turn them all off for now and move on to the next, which is up, mid, low control visibility. I'll turn that on. These are the up, mid, and low controllers, which controls like the entire lower face, upper face, and mid face. And now these are obviously cartoony type controls, as that standard humans don't have the ability to deform these entire areas. But yeah, for cartoony characters, you can get some really interesting results by being able to control the entire upper, mid, and lower part of the face. And likewise, these controllers have another way to select them, and that's going to be the up, mid, low controls in control box 2 over here. All right, that's covering a bunch of these on-face controllers. Let's next look more at this control box, which is the driving systems in here. To make it more easy to look at the character, let's turn off all other controllers for now. It should make things more clear. And let's just take one of these controllers and look at what it is. These are driving system controllers, and they are set up in a fashion often referred to as a joystick controller, which means they're easily selectable and they move in a two-dimensional plane here. And these two dimensions are essentially driving underlying controllers. So you can pick this and start moving them, and you should get like some fairly intuitive driving of other controllers. Now you can see there's a boundary box around each one of these controllers, and by default it will stop when it hits the boundary box. So that's the limits of the controller. If you needed to exceed the limit, you can just select this main controller again, turn off the limits attribute, and at that point you would be free to move the controllers as extreme as you would like to. So these joystick controllers, by default, they all have the driving something on the face if you select and move them, but they also have additional attributes. So let's look at the eyebrow here. We move them around and move the attribute. We have additional attributes for squeeze and the outer up and down motion. The eyes, you move the controller, it makes the character look around. There's extra attributes. Controls the iris size, the pupil size. You have an attribute for wide that exceeds how wide the character is looking. There's blink and there's squint. And there's blink and squint, by the way, works together. So they're set up so to make sure you don't overshoot or have any unwanted side effects by mixing the two. So they should mix nicely together if need be. We have the cheek area, the nose corners, the lips attribute here. If you just move the controller, it kind of moves the lip around on the face. There's extra attributes. We have press, which would press the lips together, squeeze, roll the lips, and pucker. Next is the control mouth, which is a fairly important control because this is the one where you move this down, it opens the mouth. Now, for convenience, the driving system here is set that if you move it to the side, it makes the mouth wider, and that gives you this fairly intuitive control where you can move this around and you get the motion of jaw opening combining with wider and narrower mouth. Couple of attributes here, which is the jaw forward, should you need to move the jaw straight forward or backwards. Likewise, there's a jaw side attribute. Lip corners, again, we briefly mentioned them before, but yeah, you can select these and move the lip corners around. Now, with the lip corners, there's an interesting couple of extra attributes here. Now, these are not the standard extra attributes, because over here you can see extra attributes here means these attributes you can control. The extra attributes that are found on the control mouth corner cannot be set. You cannot control these directly. They are only there to give you an indication of something else. And what that is, it's giving you an indication of what's here called smile and frown, and also There's narrow smile and narrow frown. And the point of that is to give you the indication that if you start applying this controller in Translate Y, you can see it starts to increase the smile. And as you increase it in X, it also increases the smile. In other words, this smile attribute is the combined result of X and Y. It is how much this controller is near the corner. All right, next down here we have emotions and phonemes. Phonemes is the standard building blocks that makes up typical languages. So you have A, E, A, E, O, R, and so on and so forth. There are other tools that connect straight to this. So if you were to use the selector, you have this thing called automatic lip sync, where you can give it an audio file. It breaks the audio file into words, and it breaks the words into phonemes, and it connects into the phonemes here. Then there's emotions, which is the kind of highest level of controller because it controls a bunch of other controllers on the system. But yeah, you can select the emotions controller and you can say happy, makes the character happy, and you can see it definitely involves driving a bunch of other controllers. We have angry, we have sad, surprise, fear, disgust, and contempt. Now, the reason why these emotions have been chosen is that these are part of a fairly high quality system called FACS, which is called a facial action coding system. You want to learn more about that, you can just search on the internet for FACS, and you can see that there's a group of scientists have broken facial animation into different building blocks, and these are the emotions that they go through and have been able to describe as to which muscles triggers for these emotions. And that's where that list comes from. There's obviously more emotions in the human spectrum, but these are the ones that are available as controllers here by default. That covers control box 1 here. Control box 2, well, we basically talked a bit about it so far. It's not driving systems. These are shortcuts. Basically, if you select this control box 1, you turn on every controller here, then there would be no need for control box 2 because they're essentially the same. You can select the eyebrow region here, or you can select it over here. You can select the nose region here, or you can select the nose region here. These are all shortcuts here. And the reason for that is because if you turn everything on, it's just very cluttered on the face. And the other reason also is that, yeah, some of these controllers by default is hard to see and select, like teeth and tongue controllers. So you can think of these controllers in control box 2 as shortcuts. And that's it for this time. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.